Welcome to the Engineering Manager Podcast. I'm Stephen Tejamulia. Today we're joined by Beena Jacob, an innovation leader who's redefined technology leadership with a customer-centric approach. Beena, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and we're super excited about this topic. This is a one dear to my heart. And let's just start right off talking about what inspired your customer-centric approach and technology as a leader.
I have to say my inspiration stemmed from a combination of professional experiences and personal observations. So early in my career, I witnessed how technology solutions often fail to meet the needs of the users. So it became clear to me that technology initiatives, although it's innovative, were not adequately aligned with real world problems or customer expectations. So this was further reinforced during my tenure as an engineer, where I saw gaps that existed where what we were developing and what the customers truly needed or expected did not match. And so these experiences instilled in me a strong belief that understanding and prioritizing the customer's perspective is crucial for success of any tech initiative. And additionally, of course, I was inspired by several industry leaders. Their success stories demonstrated how a customer centric approach not only leads to better products, but also has that stronger relationship with customers. And moreover, with the rapid evolution of technology, right, and the increasing importance of user experience in this digital age, further solidified my conviction that customer centricity should be at the core of technology leadership. It's not just about the technology itself, but that technology can improve lives, solve problems, and deliver value to the people who use it. So, in summary, I would say my approach is a culmination of professional learnings and the recognition that at the heart of all successful technology innovations, there's a deep, empathetic understanding of the customer needs and challenges.
Yeah, that is a great explanation there. As as a leader, engineering manager, now going off what you just said, sometimes it's really tempting to just move fast and take orders and get things done. But how do you implement organization which can take the time to hear the customer out and do the things that will really benefit the customer? What kind of how do you how do you set this organization up? What is your strategy to ensure that you get, you know, those core values that you've set implemented in your organization?
I would say if one is effective communication, so that the technical teams understand the business objectives and the business stakeholders have an understanding of the technical limitations and capabilities, and also providing a clear vision and direction. So, first is about a deep understanding of the customer needs. There has to be empathy, there has to be active listening as to what is the problem that we are trying to solve, and also giving a clear direction and establishing those priorities in your roadmap, in your discussions, in your cross team collaborations. All that is has to be centered around what is the customer problem and what are we trying to solve. Also, with the when you come to the tech stack, being adaptable, right? You have to stay adaptable to customer needs, being agile, and having your tech stack being modular and scalable, so that when you have the customer needs and you want to evolve with the customer needs, it has to align with those needs so that you can be adaptable and provide solutions based on their changing needs.
And from a CTO perspective, and having managed many engineering teams, what are some examples that you could share with us of how you've been able to provide a process, right, that has worked well to have cross team collaboration to get better understanding of the customer's needs and to build products around customers? Do you have any examples to share, especially for the engineering managers who are like, oh, I, how do I do it?
Mhm.
You seem like you know what you're doing, but how do I do it, right? Like, I mean, what worked for you? Because right now, it doesn't look like we're building products that customers want. We build a lot of features. There's a lot of
Mhm.
code in there, but it's not what we're not making any money. So
Mhm.
what examples you have, or what can they implement to get this thing started and going in the right direction?
So as a tech leader, and if you look at tech teams, it's the focus is more on what in emerging trends and what things are happening on the technological side, right? And how can we add that into our product? So instead of it's a change in your cultural mindset, right? Instead of thinking that way, it's about, okay, what are the problems that our customer is facing? So how do you understand those problems, right? First you have to, it's not the technical team that has that information. You have to work with your marketing team, sales team, customer service team, the frontline teams that's getting that information, right? So it's that cross functional collaboration that has to happen first in understanding all this data that we are getting from customers, whether it's real time feedback or through chats or through a customer service session, right? How are you getting that information? That has to be discussed as to what is the real problem and how are you going to solve it? And that's where innovation comes in, right? So how do you take this problem, a customer problem, and how do you want to solve it? And that's where innovation comes in. So if I have to take an example, we had an application which not had, we still have. We have an application where we deliver audio messages as an email to the customers. And so the problem is with that is it's just an attachment. The user will have to open up, listen to the audio as to what the message is. And so the request came in as to, can we have that transcribed as text so that it is an email, we can just read it. So when that came in, so we took that, we discussed internally as to how do we solve this. We can solve it different ways. We can build up like an AI team, run all the AI models, and have transcription engines, and have these messages transcribed, right? Instead, we were looking at how can we give the solution to the customer as soon as possible. It's always about how can we do it at the earliest, meet the request of the customer, and at the same time how can we iterate? We are not looking for a perfect solution, right? We give a solution first, get feedback, and iterate further on that. So we looked at what are the translation APIs engines that's available that we can make use of instead of building something on our own, right? Make something that is already available rather than you build something on your own and you don't want to spend time on that. So we looked into that. We provided a transcription service. But then, if you look at your voice messages that you get on your phone, right, whether it's iPhone or Android, if you notice that there are, if a message comes in a different language, if it's not in English, if English is what you have set on your device, it would not transcribe any other messages, right? If it's in any other language, it will just say you have a voice message and you don't know the language, you don't understand what that message is about. So that was our next step, as in our iterative release, as to, okay, the next step will be give them the feature where, regardless of which language the message comes in, it is transcribed first into the original language and then translated to their language. So, for example, if a message came in Chinese, right, in Mandarin, then it's transcribed into Mandarin first and then translated into English. So when the user gets that text message, ultimately it's in English, right? So the user is not worried about which language did the message came in. And then the next iteration we did was adding the profanity filter. So we one of our customer segment is school systems. So that was critical for them that there should be a profanity filter when these audio messages are transcribed. If there are errors and some words are, not good for the users to read. So the third iteration was adding the profanity filter. So I would say when you are solving a problem, right, understand the issue first and have an MVP release, which is the minimum viable product, and then keep iterating on it until you have that feature fully fledged and it is based on customer feedback, right? You're iterating and getting customer feedback constantly from them and then iterating again and then adding more to it. So ultimately, it's a feature that all the customers like.
That is a great example shared with shared. So steps on. Let's talk a couple. Break that down just a little bit. Deciding on the right MVP. How much time? What are tips you have for customer problem? They need to solve it. Let's not over design this. But let's create the right MVP. What's your suggestions for like what's the right size of MVP to get it out and solve it for your customer?
It depends on, I mean, are you looking at a full fledged product versus a feature, right? A feature could be a quick release versus a product takes more time. But MVP is more about what is the minimum that you need to release that product or a feature, right? So as you list all the features that you're thinking of that should be added as part of a release, you have to go through and keep your customer request and your customer need has to be front and center, right? So does that align with that request? Is it a nice to have feature or is it a core feature that you're adding? So you have to go through that process with the various teams, discuss through that, and come up with your final list as to, okay, this is our MVP, right? And further to that, it's also about not just deciding on the features. Is it technically possible, right? It has to be based on effort and your technical capabilities. If you came up with a good list of features and then you realize that, okay, this is not technically possible, there's a limitation, right? So how do you come up with a creative solution instead of that particular solution that we have outlined? So all that together, kind of, you come up with an MVP version based on what is the minimum that you have to do to solve that problem. What are your technical challenges? What's the effort for that? Is it even possible in an MVP? And that's how you come up with an MVP with, and then of course you're not stopping just at that MVP. There you still have the other features listed in your roadmap. It's just that you're going to do that initial release and get customer feedback and then iterate further on the rest of the features.
And how would you, what's worked well for you to create a feedback loop, right? Sometimes we release the MVP, we keep building the next thing, next thing, next thing, next thing, and that customer feedback loop is kind of forgotten. Um, how have you, how have you and your organization, what have you done to implement a good feedback loop? So that's, we're receiving good customer feedback as we release different things.
It's more of constant, regular meetings, right? You meet with customers, you meet with your stakeholders, you meet with internal teams, you discuss those what you have released so far. You have to keep that going on a regular basis. And so if you release something and you move on to the next thing, you're releasing the next cool feature, you kind of forgotten what you released before that, right? You got to have that regular discussion going on so that you are evaluating whatever you have released so far, right? And you're iterating on it further and further rather than just going through your roadmap on and your list of features and you're just, checking as to, okay, I'm done, next thing, instead of going back and getting that feedback. And also at that point you're prioritizing your backlog, right? You're reprioritizing your backlog based on the feedback you're getting as to what should be the next release, right? Should it be iterating based on the previous MVP that you released, or are you going on to the next feature release? So that's a fine balance that you have to do. You also have technical debt, right? For just the stability of your product, you have to take care of that also. But customer needs and solving customer problems is the high priority one, right? So having to reiterate, getting the customer feedback, and reprioritizing your backlog has to be first. Then comes the technical debt.
And then from an executive perspective, you've described well the process of organizing your team, getting feedback, collaborating, starting MVP, getting feedback on that, iterating, building more. Um, what kind of KPIs you put in place so that team members can know that customer centric expectations are important and that you can track that we are listening to the customers? Are there any ideas of KPIs you suggest to put in place?
Um, so for the technical team, I mean, for sales and marketing team, there are different KPIs that those teams track, right? That's not what the technical team is looking into. As far as technical team, I would say the KPIs we look at is customer satisfaction, right? Are the feedback that we have got, are they happy with the features? Which ones did not work out? Which ones worked? Which ones they are really happy with, right? That's one metric that we look at. The other one is the customer churn rate. Like, what's the retention rate of the customers? What was the reason for it? And how can we make that better? Those are the two main ones that on the technical side we review. As far as marketing and sales, there are other metrics that they track, but customer satisfaction and customer retention rate ultimately is tied to the customer lifetime value, right? So it is contributing to that customer lifetime value.
Very good. For those that are listening, can you tell us a little bit about what are you doing now? Who you're working with? How can people in our engineering manager community collaborate with you? Give us some background because you've shared some great insights on creating a customer-centric view, but I think the readers, I mean the listeners, love to know a little bit about you. So could you give us that background?
Currently, I'm the CTO of Dynoma. I have been with the company for a while. I started with Dynoma as a software engineer and moved on to becoming the CTO of Dynoma. My CEO and president of the company has three other companies. I'm actually the CTO of the another startup that we started a couple of years back. So I managed two of those ventures. One is a B2C oriented, and the Genoma is mainly B2B. Um, and it's more around compliance and archiving. That's our B2B solutions. And the B2C product that we released this year is more about having a chat application that is multilingual. So if you think about Signal or Telegram, it's similar to that, but it is multilingual, as in you don't have to worry about what language the other person speaks, right? You can chat with any user in any language using your own language. So you don't have to learn another language. You can chat with any other user. That's our B2C application that we launched this year.
Sounds great. Well, this has been a fabulous podcast. Any final advice you have for engineering managers aiming for a customer-centric, success in technology?
I would say in today's fast-paced, ever evolving technological landscape, right? Don't get caught up in the latest trends and evolving technologies. Think about how can you use that technology to apply to a customer problem. And when I know a lot of people think that when you think about customer needs and when you focus on customer problems, you lose innovation. That is not right. And that's where innovation happens, right? When you are keeping up with the emerging trends and your emerging technologies, and you're keeping track of what are the customer problems and real world scenarios, right? That's where innovation happens. And that's where you can actually apply innovation to good use. And I would say it extends to every aspect of leadership, right? Whether it's team building or management or strategy and execution, it is more of a culture mindset, customer centric, and this is more extending to the technical team also. So I would say listen to your customers, understand their challenges, and let that guide your innovation.
Thank you so much for sharing this invaluable insights and experiences with us today, Beena. It's been a very wisdom shared throughout the podcast today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. It
And
was
so
my
that's a wrap. Oh, you're welcome.
thank you.
Oh, thank you. There's a little time delay. Go ahead. There's a little. Oh, you're
I said
welcome.
thank
So
you.
that's a
Yeah.
wrap for this episode of the Engineering Manager podcast.
Thank
Um,
you.
don't forget to subscribe for more conversations with thought leaders like Beena Jacob, and we thank you for listening.